The courtroom hummed like a restless beehive, its marble walls holding centuries of whispered verdicts, some just, many not. Cameras clicked, pens scratched, and hushed murmurs rippled through the crowd. At the center of it all stood Marcus Hale, a 22-year-old law student, the kind of student professors bragged about when they spoke of the future of justice. But today, Marcus was not a promising scholar. He was the accused, the charge, assaulting Brandon Whitmore, the privileged son of a powerful businessman, the evidence fragile, stitched together like cheap fabric. The atmosphere poisoned long before the trial began. The judge, Raymond Dillard, adjusted his glasses and peered at Marcus as though he already saw guilt written across his skin. The prosecutor smiled knowingly, while the jury, mostly white, mostly affluent, shifted uneasily in their seats. Marcus felt their eyes on him, but he stood straight. His heart beat like a war drum inside his chest, every thump reminding him this wasn't just about guilt or innocence. This was about whether the truth could pierce the fog of prejudice, and as he clenched his fists behind the defense table, Marcus whispered to himself, "They want me silent. But I will not be silent." What no one in that room knew, not the jury, not the smirking prosecutor, not even Judge Dillard, was that before the gavel struck its final blow, this trial would expose secrets far darker than anyone expected. Secrets that could turn the entire courtroom upside down. "All rise," the bailiff barked, his voice echoing. The entire room shuffled to its feet as Judge Dillard entered. His black robe swept behind him like the shadow of doom. He settled in his chair, glanced at Marcus, and muttered just loud enough for the jury to hear. "Another street boy with fancy words. Let's see how long he lasts." A ripple of gasps fluttered through the courtroom. Marcus tightened his jaw. The man who was supposed to embody fairness had already poisoned the air with bias. The prosecutor, Linda Sharp, rose. She was sharp by name and sharper by reputation, a woman who had built her career on winning, truth secondary. With a silky voice and lethal precision, she painted Marcus as a violent, arrogant student who couldn't accept his place. "This young man," she said, pointing toward Marcus like a dagger, "could not stand the success of Brandon Whitmore." He lashed out in a fit of rage, nearly ending the life of a man destined to lead his family's empire. Jealousy, anger, pride. That is who Marcus Hale is. Dangerous, reckless, a threat to society. The words slithered through the air, wrapping around the jury like venomous vines. Marcus sat still, forced to swallow the lies. He wasn't allowed to speak yet, and every moment of silence felt like chains tightening around his chest. Then came the evidence. Brandon's torn jacket, a bruised cheek, and a single witness. A security guard named Henry Cole who conveniently worked for the Whitmore family. Flimsy evidence, laughable even, but when prejudice painted the backdrop, even feathers could feel like bricks. The judge turned to Marcus with a sneer. "You may defend yourself, but keep it short. This court has no patience for theatrics." Soft laughter rippled from the benches. Marcus rose slowly, his fists unclenching, his voice low but steady. "I will keep it short, Your Honor, but I promise you, truth doesn't need theatrics." Marcus straightened his suit, glanced at the jury, and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am not here to beg. I am here to demand justice." Henry Cole, the security guard, swaggered to the stand with smug confidence. He described the scene. Marcus attacking Brandon outside the Whitmore estate at 9:45 p.m. sharp. His words dripped with certainty. Marcus leaned in. "Mr. Cole, where were you standing at that time?" "By the east gate. And you're sure of that?" "Positive." Marcus lifted a document from the defense table. "Interesting, because the east gate logs, your own logs, show that you signed out at 9:30. So tell me, Mr. Cole, how could you witness something 15 minutes after you left?" The courtroom buzzed. Henry stuttered, face paling. I must have misremembered. Misremembered the time? Or misremembered the entire event?" Marcus's voice sharpened, slicing through the tension. He pressed further. "You also said the attacker was 6 feet tall. I am 5'8". Did you misremember that too?" Gasps rippled. The jury leaned in, their earlier unease shifting into curiosity. Judge Dillard frowned but said nothing. Then came the jacket. Marcus held it up. The prosecution claims I tore this jacket in a fit of anger. Look closely. This tear runs clean along the seam. That's not a rip. That's a cut. Almost as if someone staged it. Objection! Linda Sharp snapped. Sustained! Judge Dillard barked. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. And then Marcus dropped the question that silenced the entire courtroom. Mr. Cole, who told you to lie? The room froze. Henry's eyes darted to Brandon, then to the prosecutor before he muttered, No one. But the hesitation was enough. The whisper of corruption had entered the jury's ears. Finally, Brandon Whitmore himself took the stand. His blonde hair gleamed under the lights, his polished suit crisp, his smile rehearsed. He oozed the arrogance of a man who had never been told no. Marcus Hale attacked me because he was jealous, Brandon declared. Jealous of my success, jealous of my family's name. Marcus paced slowly, then stopped. Jealous? Or did you need someone to blame after you were humiliated? Brandon stiffened. What are you talking about? Marcus pulled out his phone. 1 week before this alleged attack, you tried to humiliate me during a campus debate. You failed. You lost in front of your classmates. You needed to protect your pride. So, when you showed up with a bruised face after a drunken brawl of your own making, you needed a scapegoat. And who better than the scholarship kid with dark skin? The prosecutor shouted, Objection! But Marcus's words hit the jury like thunder. He scrolled through text messages on his phone. Your Honor, permission to enter these into evidence. The judge sighed, annoyed. Proceed. Marcus read them aloud. Stay in your lane. Marcus. You'll never be more than a charity case. Go back where you came from. Brandon's face drained of color as the words echoed through the chamber. The jury exchanged uneasy glances. The room that once laughed at Marcus now stared at him with something different, respect, or at least doubt. By closing arguments, Marcus didn't need to shout. His words carried the weight of every injustice he had endured. I'm not asking for sympathy, he said, eyes locked on the jury. I'm asking for truth. You've seen the lies unravel. You've seen the prejudice hiding beneath them. If you condemn me today, you're not condemning my actions. You're condemning who I am, and that is not justice. Hours crawled by as the jury deliberated. The courtroom felt like a ticking bomb. Finally, the foreman returned, voice trembling. We find the defendant not guilty. Relief swept through the room like a wave. Some cheered, others hissed in outrage. Marcus exhaled for the first time in weeks. But what came next stunned everyone. Judge Dillard, the same man who mocked Marcus, leaned forward. His voice was heavy, laced with something rare, regret. Mr. Hale, this court owes you an apology. I was wrong to dismiss you. Today you reminded us that justice cannot live in prejudice. It must live in truth. The words hung in the air like a revelation. Marcus walked out into the flashing lights of cameras, reporters shouting his name, microphones thrust into his face. He should have felt triumphant. He had beaten the system, exposed lies, and shattered prejudice, if only for a moment. But as he stood beneath the gray sky, his victory felt hollow. For every Marcus who walked free, there were countless others still shackled by injustice, their voices silenced before they ever reached a courtroom. He thought of names whispered in protests, names on cardboard signs, names buried under headlines. Today he was free. Tomorrow someone else would stand where he stood. Marcus looked up, rain beginning to fall, and whispered, The truth may win battles, but prejudice keeps the war alive. Then he disappeared into the crowd, not as a defendant, not as a victor, but as another man carrying the weight of justice unfinished.